So hey, I'm Paul Hoffschmidt, founder and CEO of Alpha Sophia, and today I'm joined by Kevin Saem, brand founder and commercial director of Zapyrus. Great to have you on the pod today.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah,
excited to spend some time together.
yeah. Thanks for coming on. So to start right in, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, where you started off, and how you ended up in that role as founder of Zapyrus.
Yeah, I guess how far do you want to go back?
As far as you
So,
like, yeah, you can start with the kindergarten if you like.
yeah, kindergarten and yeah, I think it's important, I guess, to give some context on kind of my motivations and kind of where I came from. Um, I was born in Cambodia originally, actually, and spent about a third of my life there. Grew up in the 90s and experienced the HIV/AIDS epidemic there. It was kind of delayed onset from North America. US, Canada had theirs in the 80s. Cambodia, off of the genocide period, then experienced a health care epidemic there, AIDS, HIV. Personally encountered family and friends just catching it, not knowing how it's transmitted. There was like a lack of education about it. And I tell this story because it's kind of my early introduction to diagnostics and kind of the power of portable diagnostics and what got me into the research space, into point of care diagnostics in the first place. So basically, I saw the impact of that because when the UN came in and started providing portable test kits, it's when the spread of the disease was starting to be controlled. The prevalency dropped, right? And we were on track to be the first country in Southeast Asia in the 2000s there to have kind of zero prevalency of HIV spread. And so that kind of stuck with me. I don't think it was by intention, um, but it stuck with me in the back of my head when I came to Canada. I was going through the education path and went to university, um, initially into the sciences, before going into grad school and doing graduate studies there. Um, it's in the back of my mind, and so I went into research, particularly interested in portable diagnostics application for infectious disease and cancer diagnostics. I ended up doing a whole lot of different things. Start with some nanotech, materials engineering, polymer science, semiconductor stuff, a lot of clean room activity. Then went into kind of 3D materials, printing, surface chemistry, and then with the application of portable diagnostics. And so ended up actually doing portable diagnostics research. And then from there, I went to work in France. I was chief operating officer there for a liquid biopsy startup company. So it was also in the realms of oncology diagnostics, right? We're looking to replace and supplement the traditional tissue biopsy procedures that were invasive and, depending on certain cancers, inaccessible, right? You can't take tissue out of a brain or certain regions in the body is just so invasive. You really can't. So that's where kind of liquid biopsy came in, and it's been on the rise since then. That was like pre-pandemic. And then post-pandemic, I met the co-founders of a larger organization now. It's called Lumerate Inc., which Zapyrus fits under as a brand, right? So Pete and Ryan are the co-founders of that organization, the company. Super intelligent guys. I had the opportunity to meet them earlier before Zapyrus was even born, and kind of joined the gang there, and then brought Zapyrus to market just about 3 years ago. Yeah, 3, 4 years ago. So that's kind of the origin story and kind of my background in medtech.
So, so that's really interesting to see how you basically from your personal background ended up in that industry and wanted to make a difference to that industry, which I mean ultimately always changed patient lives going forward. And then at some point when you met the founders of Luminate, you decided to move into software basically. How did that
Yeah.
how did that I mean what motivated you to do that?
Yeah, I'm always driven by, I've always been driven by impact creation.
Mm.
So really the industry almost doesn't matter to me. I just enjoy solving complex, multifaceted problems, and that's what got me into research and science in the first place. I like building things, making things, and kind of challenging the
Yeah.
status quo and pushing the boundaries of innovation. I did that in research, and then in the startup, I'm trying to do that here in the tech and business development world, combining kind of two worlds together, right? The business side, and then the science and healthcare side.
I personally can totally relate with that. Also something which is really true about
Yeah.
myself. And also, I mean, in the end, with the Zapyrus now, you're supporting service providers match up with the right medical device companies, and then ultimately, I mean, making those companies better, more efficient, more successful, and then ultimately benefiting the
Hmm.
system as well, right? So it's, I mean, it's more an enabler than being the direct innovation touch point. But I mean, you're still in that ecosystem, and I can imagine we can talk about that later. That your insights about the
Hmm.
industry also helps you in understanding needs and also consulting your clients probably on how to work in that industry.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's been a lot of fun, and MedTech is, I think, always a few steps behind the biopharma side of
Mm.
healthcare, right? The industry joke is that MedTech is the redheaded stepchild, or of the healthcare industry, of the biopharma industry, right? Organizations that do both do MedTech like on the side, and they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
we do MedTech sort of, and it always gets neglected just because the market share between MedTech and pharmaceuticals and biotech is a very large gap. It doesn't mean the patients don't need these devices or
Mm.
diagnostic tools. Like, I mean, we saw that in COVID, right?
Yeah.
There was no medication on the biotech and pharma side that could have come in if you weren't able to diagnose the disease in the first place and control the prevalency, which I got a flashback to Cambodia. It was like, oh my gosh, this is global pandemic now happening, and diagnostics again came into the rescue. Leading into COVID, it was like starting to be kind of deprioritized, defunded, right? We're like, okay,
Mm.
diagnostics, it's it's cool and all, but we're looking for these innovative cures and therapies and stuff. And then people were reminded again, like a decade or two later, right? Every decade there's like this big health crisis. And then they're
Yeah.
reminded again that, diagnostics comes in to the rescue, and I get flashbacks to that time. Every 10 years or so, I get reminded, like, yeah, this is why we're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, let's hope it sticks. And I mean, there's always a tendency of those things to fade away again when people, when the memory starts fading, or as
Mhm.
irrational as it is. But let's maybe just take a step backward again and look at your company and at Spirus and what you're building, what you've built. I mean, I think you're describing yourself as the most actionable sales system in MedTech for MedTech service providers. Could you explain a little bit more tangible to maybe to a layperson what your product is, what you're offering, who your typical customers are, and which value proposition your solution brings to the market?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing is that when you think about data and intelligence, there's data out there, like in the internet, right? On Google, on all sorts of search engines. It's messy. That's the biggest thing. And most of the tools out there in the market are industry agnostic. The way we separate ourselves is that we're very industry specific. So we're built just for medtech. So that already gets us very clean data, and we can elevate the signal and suppress the noise in the market for our customers. And so that's a huge benefit when
Mm.
time is of the essence and when you're talking about sales and marketing, either strategy and implementation, right? Because it's all
Yeah.
against time, right? So that's kind of what separates us in our philosophy in approaching data. Really, everything that we do is to try to elevate the signal and suppress the noise. The actionability standpoint comes from um, me. having a background in science and doing data analysis in the lab, I found that data could be a double-edged sword. Like it could lead you down the right path or the wrong path. It depends on how you look at it, right? And so when you're trying to do something with that data, what you want is actionable insights, insights that drive actionability.
Mm.
And that's how we structure our product and our data. It's to say everything we have in our tool for MedTech teams and businesses, we want them to be able to act on it. Whatever we're showing, we want them to see it and say, I want to go and speak to this person about this, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about, I always look at it like the ancient Greeks and the agora, how, it's like a central place to have conversation, to discuss philosophy, to do business. Um, and in the medtech world, we do things quite traditionally, where it's a lot of repeat business, word of mouth, handshakes at conferences, and those conferences act like these agoras, which are very efficient at lowering down the barriers to do business and having meaningful conversations. But then the world is moving into this technology front, right? The technology era,
Yeah.
where volume is prioritized. And so you have these two combating forces of the old world and the new world. And there's two typically that polarizes people in the market. There's businesses and people and leaders that really double down on the volume approach of
Mm.
tools, right? They love tools. They're like, okay, it's a volumes game. We want to touch as many clients as possible. Whereas the other people are saying, well, I've been in the business for 40 years and I have a heavy book of business and my relationships is a high conversion relationship, and I'm able to close business and bring in repeat business through that relationship. The problem is one can scale and the other one can't scale. Once that person retires, their book of business and relationships is gone. It doesn't scale with the rest of the team and with the
Yeah.
new people coming through. What we're trying to do is design a tool and data that's actionable so that we close that gap. We're combining high volume, not in terms of spamming people or outreach, high volume in terms of taking high volume of information and consolidating it down so that those people can use it to make those meaningful relationships, either in person or digitally
Yeah.
on email or LinkedIn. Yeah.
Maybe to explain that in what that actually is. In my understanding, it's a database in the end, which has data on every active medical device company in the market, and then you focus on
Mhm.
signals, right? So you provide all sorts of signals about those medical device companies. For example, as we use it, we are looking at medical device companies who are starting commercialization. Yeah?
Mhm.
Where, I don't know, for example, they went to recent approval points, or they've hired key personnel, chief commercial officer, and so on. And then we can
Mhm.
be hyper specific and at looking at those companies, seeing who they are, what they do, which kind of history they have behind them, to then reach out to them in a meaningful way and yeah and communicate to them what we are doing as a company. So that's how we use Zapyrus in our process. Is this like a typical use case, or are there other use cases we are not currently utilizing?
That's one use case of Zapyrus for sure. The other use cases involve strategic sales planning and then also
Mm.
marketing use cases where most organizations already sit on top of a book of business. Like you don't open a business and start a business just on accident, right? You've done your kind of research, market research. You know a handful, if not more, set of companies that are ideal for you, right? And so within that set of companies, you want to understand, or businesses, I think, in general, want to understand which ones of those are higher priority and actually need our service
Mm.
versus the ones that are not the right timing yet. So beyond just finding new companies and new signals, we're kind of looking out for you within your own known market
Existing,
already
yeah,
existing. Yeah. And we're just as good as informing signal for actionability, also showing you the lack of signals that indicates the company is inactive. So that's also just as important
yeah.
as there is a signal. The lack of a signal is also an indicator that that company is not very active, and chances are you're not going to move that conversation forward, right? So that's the other use case. And then I would say the third, there's multiple use cases. I'm not going to go into all of them, but the third one is looking out uh, for you, like looking behind to say, we spent a lot of time building relationships with these sets of companies, right? And then the project didn't go through for whatever reason, and you still have that relationship that you've built. You don't want to completely neglect it, but you can't focus on that and drive your business forward. You got to look for new
Mm.
opportunities. Zapyrus does a good job at monitoring the activity on those sets of companies and then alerting you on nurturing opportunities with those signals to say, now is probably the right time. Maybe it wasn't before, but this signal indicates that you should get in touch again, right? And so
Understood,
it
understood, yeah.
covers, yeah.
Okay, med device folks, picture this. What if you could open up a CRM today and it already contained information for every potential lead for you in the country? And you could narrow down those leads further by looking at billing, location, seniority, so much more. Alpha Sophia is the strategy tool that we wish we had had when we were commercializing a medical device in the US market. But there's nothing stopping you. So visit alphasophia.com and learn more.
Yeah.
And in terms of roadmap and development of the company, you've been there from the start, built up that company as a spin out of Luminate. What are the things you're currently focusing on? So what's top of your mind at the moment for your company for that current phase you're in as a startup within a startup?
Mhm. Yeah, Lumerate is the parent
Sorry for that.
organization. Yeah, no worries. I mean, people mispronounce Zapyrus all the time. I've heard Zapyrus. I've heard, yeah, all sorts of things for Zapyrus. Um, sorry, to your question, what is next? What is kind of the next thing for Zapyrus? Or
Yeah. So what are the current challenges you're currently working on the most? Are you mostly growth focused now, or is there a big product roadmap you're focusing on? So what's top of your mind as you're leading the
yeah,
organization?
yeah. I mean, our philosophy is built for the user, and that's ingrained with us because we're a bootstrap company, and so we're not backed by investors or anything, right? And so our users are really our investors, like from day one. And so we try to stick really close to the users, and because they're the front line kind of first signal to say this is happening in the market. We need to switch things up because of XYZ, right? And so they inform where we go next. So we're super close to our users from that perspective, and we take their direction on what to develop, how to develop, what makes sense, right? And that informs that actionability side. So that allows us to have, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's a super valuable point, and it's not only for you as a software company founder, but also for medical device companies. Should always be the guiding principle, thinking backwards from the ultimate user, whether it's the patient, the surgeon, the
Hmm.
physician, or in your case, medical device service provider companies, and then constructing every design and development decision based from the
Hmm.
feedback you're getting from there, right? And um, I mean, that especially helps you
Hmm.
to iterate fast and get to a solution that actually fits to the use case you're trying to serve.
Yeah, and I think that resonates with me also. I mean, in the tech world, but also when I was working on medical devices and diagnostic systems. I mean, the word in our industry is human factors engineering, right? Like
Mm.
when you bring new diagnostic tools to market or devices, you want to understand how people are going to interact with it, what works, what doesn't work in a practical setting. And I was working closely with pathologists and clinicians that would be using that product and to get their feedback to be able to advise design. It's the same philosophy over on the tech side for us here for that. And so we're in a growth stage to answer your original question. We're definitely in the growth stage right now because we're entering our third year now for Zapyrus. And we're super excited. We've had a great trajectory so far, and we're continuing to grow, and we have excellent customers that we enjoy spending time with on a daily and a weekly basis.
Awesome. And maybe, as you know, both worlds, the world of growing a software business and the world of R&D in the diagnostic space, is there anything you would say you learned in being a software founder? What could be good advice for medical device founders?
I don't know if I'm in the position to give advice, to be honest. Um, I always try to look for similarities and trends that are repeatable. Um, I take the approach of having a controlled environment when you're starting anything new. I always try to have a controlled environment, whether it's in research, whether it's in diagnostic startup companies or a tech company, where you can fail fast and experiment. Because then that helps, at least for me, I don't know if I can speak for everybody, it's helped me really understand where to focus energy and effort. Because then you start crossing out, what doesn't work. And that's more valuable for me to understand because then I can focus on my energy on what does work. And so instead of having all these fancy strategies and then um, doubling down on it for a couple of years and then finding out later, oh, that doesn't fit or that doesn't work. I have all these testers I go and quickly test and we're like, this is not going to go anywhere, not going to go anywhere, but this has some merit. So let's invest in this. And so it's a bit more calculated on that end um, and it's proven to work so far from kind of my research days all the way to now. And so that's kind of my philosophy and what I lean on.
So in MedTech and medical device, not only when it comes to research and development, but actually also when it comes to sales and marketing, it's constant trialing and testing path A against path B and getting feedback from the market. And this basically iterating towards an optimal strategy or an optimal product.
Yeah, and also surround like I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by very intelligent people. So I take no credit on that. Like they're very intelligent people, they're passionate people, and they're very hardworking. And I think those are the three secret sauce combination set of traits. I think passion, hardworking, and they're very intelligent. And so that combined leads to magic, I think. So yeah, I give credit to them, really.
So in the end, I mean, it's always the people you bring together to make things
Yeah,
work, right? I mean, it's
yeah.
you can have the best idea and write it in capital letters on I don't know, the
hmm
uh, on the streets. No one is gonna take that idea away from you unless you have the people together who actually can make it work. Um,
hmm
maybe one step higher. If you look at all the medical device companies in the world with your solution and aggregate data on them, are there any trends you see over the course of the last 3 years since you were active in, I don't know, speed of new companies coming up, or is
hmm
the number of signals arising? Is there any acceleration, deceleration? Is there anything you're seeing?
Yeah, definitely. So what we're seeing, let's start from a high level, right? Because a lot of people operate centered around financing and funding in the market, right? So they use that to advise direction and development. The misconception is that funding is going to advise current year development. What we learned from our data was that the funding actually advises development in progress about a year out. about a 12-month cycle. So especially in the device space, I think that is a little bit different in the biopharmaceutical space, just because their life cycle is a lot longer to bring a drug to market versus devices, depending on the risk classification. It can be very quick or it could be very long, right? If it's a class three, something completely new. So that's what we're seeing from a funding perspective. We did pull data around like 2022, 2023, and Q1 of 2024. And what we saw was Q1 of 2023, although the funding was way less than Q1 of 2024, there was more medical devices going into clinical trials, diagnostic companies getting product approval than they do this year. And that's because of the COVID cash injection from the prior years that basically fed development in the next year, right? And so that's the trend that we notice, which I think leaders should pay attention to when they're doing strategic planning for a new year. They should actually look at the financial data from the previous year to be able to project out into the new year, which is a good thing in a way because that data exists, right? If you had to only rely on existing year data, that's an incomplete data set and it's hard to then make projections, right? So yeah. The other trend is that we are seeing with the rise and the official launch of ChatGPT and large language models and stuff like that, we're seeing the number of software as a medical device companies rise like quickly. The amount of funding distribution for those companies, so software as a medical device, digital therapeutics, that's increased from pre-COVID to now, like exponentially. And I think it's going to gain more and more market share and investment dollars over the next 3-4 years as the dust settles and things get more tangible, like ideas and companies and applications get more tangible in the medtech space. We see that reflected in the service providers as well. Now you got cybersecurity service providers for medical devices, which really didn't exist five or so years ago in the volume that it does, right? Because AI wasn't a really big application then in terms of the medical device space. It was an application in other things, but not so much in medical device.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Maybe turning the table around a little bit. I mean, your sales and marketing software platform, software tool. But what types of products are you using yourself to acquire new customers, to find new users for your solution? Are you using similar strategies? Are you as the ones you're basically selling yourself, or how do you do that?
Yeah, we employ the philosophy of value over volume. So we don't really do any high volume approaches. It's very customized, it's very timely, it's very targeted, which is slower, but we're in it for the long term. And we found that we're practicing what we preach. Yeah. We don't have tools in our arsenal like Zapyrus to be able to speed things up and basically take what you can do in an hour. Let's say you're able to take that philosophy in business development and touch, I don't know, like 8 companies in an hour, right? And engage with 8 leaders in those companies in an hour. Zapyrus helps to shorten that and double, triple that just because everything is consolidated into one place, right? And so for us, we don't really have that tool. So we're stuck a little bit to whatever's available in the market. So Google, LinkedIn, things like that. But we still do that heavy research before any outreach.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe one closing question, Kevin. When we first met in person at LSI USA in Dana Point a few months ago, the first time I saw you were wearing a red velvet suit. What is it about that? Is it a marketing strategy? Is it a conversation opener? Tell me about your secret sauce.
It's not, and it's not a secret sauce. It's none of that. It's just a very poor buying decision that I have to then find
It's
justification
not.
for.
It's not.
Um, no, the funny story actually, I was like, oh, this is a really nice, blazer, and I was with my wife at the time, and she's like, when are you gonna wear that? Like, you're never gonna wear that, and I'm like, yeah, I'll wear it somewhere, but it's just a really nice blazer. So she's like, you're never gonna wear it, so I bought it, and then I had to justify the ROI on getting it. So at every chance that I get, I'm like, okay, I gotta wear this because then,
Not your
like,
go to piece.
yeah, exactly. Like you can't just wear that to the office.
But it
So,
was super handy. I was chatting to your colleague and asking her where I can find you, and she was like, "Kevin is downstairs, and you're gonna spot him immediately. I don't even have to tell you. You're gonna see him immediately." And it worked out really well. I mean, it's a good way in finding people or making people find you at a conference. So maybe something to think about for
yeah,
other people attending
yeah,
conferences and wanting
yeah,
to stick out.
yeah. Totally not by intention, by accident, but yeah, I guess it worked out. The fact that we're talking about it on a podcast, I think
100%.
ROI right there.
The
And
ROI is there. It's positive. Kevin, it was so
yeah,
much fun talking to you today. Yeah, great. Thanks a lot for joining us today, and yeah, looking forward to continuing to see how Zapyrus grows. And
yeah,
I think what
absolutely.
you're doing is really great for the industry. We're using the platform on our own. It's amazing. It helps us a lot in our outreach, in our market segmentation, and getting a deeper understanding about what's happening in the market. So shout out to you guys, and yeah, looking forward to continuing to see what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and it's been a great Friday. Start to the Friday, I guess.
Thanks.
Can you afford to have a rep in every county, or do you need to be hyper targeted in your outreach? Do you need to know information about your targets going in to be successful, or do you have years and years before you want to close that deal? If you want to be focused, if you want to deliver fast, you should visit alphasophia.com and help your sales team out.